Good morning, Brookfield Zoo fans, and welcome to this episode of Bringing the Zoo to You. I'm your host, Tim, and I'm happy to invite you to look at Tropic World, South America. Tropic World is one of our largest habitats here at Brookfield Zoo. I think they started building it back in 1973, and it was a big undertaking. This building is over I think a football field and a half long, and you can see the size of it. 60-foot ceilings and waterfalls, and so it's very complex. So it took about 9 to 10 years to get the building built. It opened up in sections. We have both South America section, which we're going to talk about today, and then Asia, which is next door, and then Africa. So this habitat is about going through 3 different continents and the animals that reside in those tropical areas of those continents. It's a wonderful habitat. At the time, back in the early 1980s when it opened, it was the largest indoor themed habitat for primates. And so things have changed, but it's still a great habitat and a great place to come and observe all the animals that live in these particular areas. South America is actually one of my favorite sections. I spend a lot of time, I've been here 40 years, and I still love going out and exploring animals, and I love coming here, whether it's on a lunch hour or a break, just to observe behavior. And that's my job here at Brookfield Zoo, is to manage the applied animal behavior programs. So what does that mean? Well, as you know, from humans all the way down to worms, every animal behaves. And what you need to know about behavior is it's a very important part of every animal's lives, because it allows them to interact with their environment, and they do that for 2 reasons. One, either to get away from things that they're afraid of or could be dangerous, or to acquire good things that they want and need. And so they use behavior in their environment to get those things or to avoid those things. And so the most important thing to remember is all behavior has function. Even though Tropic World is still closed, we still have a few primate species out here today. We have the squirrel monkeys, which you see out there, the small yellow tannish brown creatures. And the spider monkeys are out here too, and so we're going to go look for those a little bit later, as well as we have our two-toed sloths here, Lawrence and Raisin. So these are 3 species of animals that interact in their environment in different ways. They all have different needs and desires, and it's my job to work with the animal care staff to find out what these animals need and how we can maybe change the environment or add to the environment to make sure that it provides for their well-being. Over the 3 or 4 decades that this habitat's been open, some of the species have changed, and so the habitat had to change to meet the needs of the new species. So you can see those squirrel monkeys right now, they're jumping around. These animals are very arboreal, and they spend their time mostly in the mid-level of the forest, the rainforest, and they are out there, and you can see they're obviously very good climbers. So when we're studying and trying to figure out better ways to provide for, say, squirrel monkeys, we look at their natural history. All behavior has function. We may not understand why they're doing it, but they're doing it for a reason. Animals don't expend energy unless they have a reason. And so this animal is one that forages. It's an omnivore, and so most of its day is out there looking for food, right? So they have to find worms or some other bugs, or they'll find fruit. I think they even look for eggs, so they have a wide variety, but those things don't come to them. They have to go out and find them. They have to acquire them. Sometimes they have to fight for them. And so squirrel monkeys like this learn really good strategies to modify their behavior to get what they want. So they have obviously the great climbing skills to work through the canopy to find their food. But also, finding the food requires them to use all of their senses, their eyesight, their hearing, their sense of smell. And once they can use those, they can kind of find their food, and sometimes that food is hidden behind something, or they have to reach in and grab it, or they have to use a buddy to try and work together to do something. All that behavior is extremely important to them. So what does that mean for animal care specialists here at the zoo? Well, we have to make sure that the animals are able to kind of express all that really healthy behavior. Foraging behavior. Sleeping is an important behavior. They have to get rest after all that exercise they did hunting for food all day. So we want to make sure that they have really good places to rest, comfortable places, where they feel safe and secure. We also want to look for their needs from a social species. Squirrel monkeys are very social. They can be in very large troops, and we want to make sure that their social needs are met. Sometimes that means giving them an area to congregate, and sometimes that means it's a way to give them a chance to get apart. Just like your brothers and sisters at home, sometimes your brother might be a little annoying and you might want to get away from them. And as long as there's a place for you to go to do that, it helps your well-being. And sometimes you want to play a game with your brother and you go and find a way to do that. So at Brookfield Zoo, we provide obviously the huge space for the animals to separate if they want to, but also to come together and congregate on needs. So finding food is something that the troop will do together. They might go looking for bugs one day. And if they find it, they might use their vocalizations, their sounds to scream out and say, hey guys, there's food over here. And so the group might come together to find a nest of bugs or something that is really tasty to eat. And so here at the zoo, we find ways to allow them to forage. We either, you can see, I don't know if you can look, Lynette, there's lots of kind of things attached to our trees. They're very hard to see because we camouflage them. But those little kind of pockets are places we can put some of their diet. All the animals here at Brookfield Zoo get great diets that are prescribed by our nutrition and supplied by our nutrition department. The animal care staff every day provide the diet to the animals, but we don't want to necessarily just give it to them in a pan. We want them to use that natural behavior they've developed over millions of years to get that food. So the keepers in the morning will go ahead and spread out food, and there's dozens and dozens of these little pockets all around the habitat where the keepers put the food, and the animals have to go out and find it. And they do a great job of it. In fact, they're oftentimes too good, and so they'll find that food very quickly. And our job here is to say, well, in the wild, these animals may forage for several hours a day. And so another way we can supplement that is to make it harder to get that food, giving them challenges to overcome. So the food is there, but they have to kind of dig through what we call forage piles. So the bugs are actually in mulch or in other things where they have to dig through to actually pull the bugs out and use all those skills they have. We often use timed feeders or automatic feeders that the keepers can load in the morning, but they distribute the food throughout the day. Sometimes that food or diet will fall into the exhibit. Sometimes it'll fall into another forage pile, so the animal has to forage for it. But these are all ways that we can give the animals opportunities to express that behavior. Behavioral diversity is a term that's used to describe all the behavior that the animals have. And we found a really direct correlation to the more behavioral diversity the animal shows us here at Brookfield Zoo and in the wild, it means that their welfare is better. So our job is to try and give them more opportunities to do healthy behavior. So now we've seen the squirrel monkeys, I'm really interested to see where those spider monkeys are, our black-handed spider monkeys. I thought I saw them when we came in. If you want to come this way, Lynette. So our spider monkeys are a much bigger species. Oh, there they are. Can you see them, Lynette, down? You might have to come over here from the bridge.
They're looking
down there. Yeah, they're looking at us right now. So this is an animal that is also very arboreal. You may be saying, well, why are they down on the ground here on that little plant down there? I don't know right now. That's the best question for a behaviorist and for animal care specialists that are interested in behavior is the question of why. Why are the spider monkeys here now? Why aren't they up in the trees where we expect them to be? We don't know, but we might want to figure that out because that information can help us understand their needs. Their needs at 11:10 this morning might be different than their needs at 2 in the afternoon. So I can take guesses. I could say, well, maybe they want to go down there because it's close to the water fountain. So maybe they're looking to be in a more humid environment at this time. They need humidity. And in that position, they would be there. Maybe they want to be under something. They're under a bit of a rock outcropping there, so they might feel at this time more safe and secure. They might be wanting to get away from the squirrel monkeys who might have been annoying a few minutes ago before we started. And so they found some nice quiet place to sleep and rest during the morning. But I do know they will go up in the trees, and oftentimes, as an average part of their day, they'll be up in the highest parts of the trees, which they are out in the forest in South America. This animal is a great, it locomotes by brachiating or using their hands, which are kind of hook-shaped, to move between the trees or to crawl across the vines. And they have a prehensile tail, which allows them kind of a fifth hand or fifth arm to help them secure themselves in the trees. Oftentimes when you see them sleeping or resting, they have their prehensile tail wrapped around the branch, and it's just their kind of protection. It's really strong. It can actually support their entire weight, and it can actually, it has much dexterity. They can actually hold things in their tail. So it's great when they're kind of moving through the trees. Their hands are free, but they might be carrying some food in their tail to go back to a spot to eat. They're trying to find their lunch table, so to speak. So if I were interested about why the spider monkeys are down here, we might use, say, videotape. And we use a lot of video to kind of track what's going on. Right now we actually have a video camera here looking at our sloths doing time lapse, trying to find out why they're spending time in one place and when they decide to go to another. All this information helps us understand their needs better, and that means we can look for ways to improve the habitat. We're always trying to do that. This habitat is fantastic for these animals, but it doesn't mean we can't get better at it. So if you're constantly trying to improve it through incremental steps, every day becomes better for each one of these animals. And so as a behaviorist, I'm always working with the animal care staff and their managers to set goals every year. So what is it? Are we seeing a behavior in these animals that we're not seeing enough of? How can we increase that behavior because we know it's healthy? Are we seeing a behavior that is happening too much? How can we change the environment to decrease it? Are we not seeing a behavior that we think is healthy? And so we can look back at their natural history and look for what in the environment triggers that behavior. And then we can start to make modifications to the environment to hopefully draw that behavior out of the animal. So this is a constant process. We're never done. And it's cool because it's like a puzzle. We're trying to figure out the animal. We can't talk to each other in language. We can't ask them what they want. So all we have is our understanding of their natural history and what they show us. Behavior is probably one of the most important pieces of information we can use to learn about what their needs and wants are. And we have to learn how to study that. We have a scientist here at Brookfield Zoo that helps us measure that behavior, because the first thing you have to do is to find out how much of it you have if you're concerned about do we need more or less of it. And so we have ways of measuring that behavior. Once we understand what they're currently doing, we say, okay, they're foraging for food here at the zoo 30% of the time of their day, of their waking day. And we say, well, it may be better if they forage 40% of their time. And so then we develop strategies to help change the environment so that we can spread their food out to increase their foraging time to that 40% or something close to it. Once we reach that, we look for another goal. Maybe we want the spider monkeys to use more of the habitat. We've noticed that they're only spending time in this little area down here and only 3 of the 10 trees we have. So we would look at ways of saying, well, what would attract a spider monkey to another tree or a different area? There's so much space here, but if that space isn't valuable to the animal's not going to go there. Again, all behavior has function, and it's our job to make sure that we're providing the best habitat for the animals and always looking for ways to improve it. You might look across, let's go down here to the right a minute. You can see that we have vines going across from the habitat across the public walkway to this upper area here. That wasn't like that when they first designed the habitat. But back in the early 90s, we started noticing something that concerned us a little bit. Some of the smaller callitrichids, the cotton-top tamarids or the Gordon-line tranamins, were kind of on this railing here, on this public railing. And we're like, well, that's not cool. We don't want them to potentially get an unwanted interaction with our guest. But we asked, why are they there? Why are they leaving their habitat to come here? And we started watching them and saying, you know, they look really interested in the plants and stuff on the walls. Maybe they want to go up there. And so we had to discuss the pros and cons of that. What are the benefits and what are the potential safety and risks that might be involved with that? We decided, let's give it a try. And so we put these vines across and gave them areas to go up there to visit. It was a smash hit. The public loved it. They got closer to the animals, being able to stand underneath them, watching them transit across a vine from one place to another, it was great. It was great until the sloths came, our recent two-toed sloths. We didn't necessarily want the sloths to go across those vines, but the sloths wanted to go across. And so our first course of correcting that was to try and block them from going across. So we put things on the vines that we thought only the monkeys could get across, but the sloths couldn't. Well, they quickly taught us a lesson that no, if I want to get over there, I'm going to get over there, I'm going to figure it out. And so the sloths used all their great behavior to go across, said, you know what, why are we trying to stop them? There might be something good out there. And so we ended up saying, let's let them go across too, and we built them some shelters. You can see one of our sloths is up in one of we call them yurts. They're made out of car wash fabric. It's a very soft kind of hammock that the sloths really, really enjoy. So we put one of their habitats there. That way they can go across, but the public can still see them and enjoy them. We give them some food, a way to forage for some of their diet there as well. So we took what may have been a lemon and turned it into lemonade. And animals always help us do that. They tell us what they want. We say, okay, let's try and figure out why that is. Is it good for them or bad for them? And then we adjust the environment to adapt to that. And so the animals are always teaching us things, and my job as a behavior analyst is to learn from that, help the animal care staff learn from that as well, and that allows us to make incremental improvements to the animals' lives here. Any questions that are coming up for you, Lynette, that I might be able to answer?
Yeah, so about how long would it take from conception to completion for one of these behavioral
enrichments, maybe?
Yeah, let's say you want to put in a feeder.
Yeah, so good question. We have some goals that we're going to try and meet. So it really depends on how large it is and what we have to change. So one of the things we're hoping to do here in the not too distant future is to give more foraging opportunities up into the higher parts of the tree. Now you see most of the places we're putting food now are down low.
Right.
That's because that's where the keepers can reach with their tools. We have little buckets we can do that. But how do you get food way up into the tree? Well, in some other areas of Tropic world, we've used pulley systems where a pulley can be used to bring a basket down where we can load it with food and then bring it back up to the tree. But that means we have to modify the tree, and to do that, to get up to that height safely, we have to build scaffolding. So what we do is we plan a year out. Every year in the wintertime, around January and February, we do kind of big renovations to Tropic world and other areas. And it's during that time when it's shut down that we can make those big changes. So we start working with our plants and facilities here and say, listen, we want to do this. We buy the parts, we engineer it, we design it, we test it maybe at a smaller scale to make sure it's going to work. And then we go ahead and we put it in. You might notice, it's hard to see, Lynette, but way in the back you can see up on that rock there's a kind of an odd looking tree.
Oh yes.
That's actually disguising a timed feeder. So the keepers can get way back up there, and I think actually that's where Emily did her zooting you up in that walkway there. So the care staff every morning can load that feeder, and that feeder can last from anywhere from 8 to 12 hours. And so by putting the food in special spots, that's one of the ways we can encourage more foraging from the animals. That took about maybe a month to do, to get the materials and actually to produce it. Some changes are really simple. Let's go over to your left here again. So this little island here is for some of our callitrichids that we use. And notice there's another island across the way that used to be for another animal. And we said, wouldn't it be cool if our animals could get from here to there if they wanted to? And so we, in just a matter of weeks, just created a vine that we can safely attach from that island to this island. That gives them so much more opportunity to explore and to have fun. And then the nice thing is we can actually remove that vine. Sometimes that happens in the wild too. A storm comes and a vine breaks, and so your normal pathway is gone. That allows that area to be really valuable because it's not always available. Just like when you go to an amusement park, you don't go there every day. So if you have access to it a couple times a day, it's actually more fun because it doesn't happen as often and you don't get used to it. So that's how those changes can be either bigger or smaller, but we're willing to do all of them based on what the animal's needs are.
That's really neat. Now you were talking about the time feeder. What's the benefit of something like that?
Again, to spread the food out. The history of zookeeping going way back in time was to present what I tend to call the meal plan, where the care staff would present if they get on a 2-meal plan, they get a meal in the morning and a meal at night. And oftentimes it's really in a pan. The animal gets a pan in the morning. And that's great, the animals love it. But unfortunately it's not great for their behavior. It's not what they were, I'll use the word, designed to do. These animals have all these skills and physical adaptations that allow them to find food over that period of time, and we know that that behavior is important to their well-being. So we're getting away from the meal plan and putting food in ways that they have to go out and find it and forage it, use all those senses. And that does a couple of things. It encourages a healthy mind, because they have to think about, how do I get that food if there's a challenge, or where can I go find it? They get curious. It creates physical activity, which is helpful. Keeps those muscles strong and their bones strong. So from their physical health, it's very helpful. And behaviorally, it's something that we want our guests to see. We want to show them the wonderful ways these animals can locomote across this big habitat, and to show how the spider monkeys use their tails, how they look for food with their hands. And so that's great for our guests, who can then learn more about these animals, learn to appreciate them, which is why we're here. We want to make sure that we create conservation leaders in all of our guests. So they go back, when they leave the zoo, they go up and they say, I care about animals more now, and so I'm going to do things in my own life that are going to benefit animals in the wild.
Have you ever found that you created enrichment for one species, but a different species maybe appreciated it more?
Yes, and the other way, where we create an enrichment that, say a big species like a spider monkey, if we create enrichment for the squirrel monkey, the spider monkey might be able to outcompete them because they're bigger and stronger. So that's one of the, when we're designing an enrichment strategy, we have to consider that. In a habitat like this, where there are multiple different species, we have to say, well, will the spider monkeys want this? If they do, then we add that into the equation, our design. But for instance, say for the for the squirrel monkeys, they like bugs. Spider monkeys don't. So our enrichment, if it's going to contain food, we might just keep it to bugs. On the other hand, same with spider monkeys. If we have enrichment for them, we don't necessarily want the squirrel monkeys to have it. So we consider ways. Well, maybe their arms aren't long enough to reach it, so we might put it into a tunnel where only the spider monkeys can go in and reach it, but the squirrel monkeys can't. So we can use their physical adaptations or their limitations to make sure that enrichment is going to the animal that needs to go to.
So it sounds to me like all the things you're talking about require a lot of cooperation between you and the keepers and the animals. So I think sometimes people think we just kind of put the animals out here and then not forget about them, but go out and do other things. But really, they're always being observed.
They are.
They're
yeah.
always being, their behaviors are always being not modified, but
cared for.
Thank you. I couldn't think of the word that I was looking for.
Yeah, that's my title. I'm the curator of behavioral husbandry, and husbandry means to care. So I care for behavior. And yes, I'm one of several welfare service programs. So along with veterinary services, along with nutrition services, even our environmental quality experts and our behavioral scientists, we all work together as a team for the same goal, which is to improve welfare. All of our perspectives are a little bit different, but we can contribute to each other's goals because all of these things are connected. We can't, the veterinarians need things like samples, like they need blood samples or they need injections. We can use animal training, positive reinforcement, to allow the animals to participate and maybe offer their arm up for an injection or to take a medication. That helps the veterinarians achieve their goals. The nutritionist produces all these great diets, but if you have a different diet for the spider monkeys than you do for the squirrel monkeys, we know that behavior can be used as a way to make sure that the spider monkeys get their diet and the squirrel monkeys get theirs. And so that helps the nutritionist achieve her goal. So we're all complementary. We look at things a little bit differently, but that helps us produce the best possible welfare for our animals.
That's great.
Well guys, hopefully you loved talk about behavior. It's one of my favorite things, but you can do the same thing at home. If you have a pet, pay attention to them. Why are they doing what they're doing? Ask a question and then try and test it. Make changes to the environment and see how that changes the behavior. It's a lot of fun and you'll actually get closer to your pet and learn more about them. Anyway, it's been great spending some time with you. We can't wait to see you back out here again at Brookfield Zoo. And until then, have a great time and we look forward to seeing you as soon as possible. Take care.